Are you hoping to get a jump start on the fall frenzy of getting visible? If so, now is the time to start sending pitches out so that you have enough lead time for interviews to go live before the end of the year. If this statement has you a little anxious because your ducks are not perfectly in a row, this episode on Pitching Messy is for you, my friend. Hi there, pitches. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Go Pitch Yourself. I am your fearless leader, Angie Trueblood, and I am so honored that you are spending this part of your day with me. Today's episode is another in our Summer Lovin' series of our past top downloaded episodes. This one is from March 2022 and was actually the precursor episode to our 5 and 5 pitching challenge. In it, I chat about the minimum steps needed to get a targeted pitch out of your inbox, messily, right? The different parts of this method, including clarifying what you want to achieve, yes, actual goal setting, identifying your ideal listener, and crafting a one-topic pitch template. I think it has proved to be popular because it not only lowers the pressure for pitching yourself, spoiler, it does not have to be perfect, but also because I share actionable steps to take. Win-win, right? All right, I hope you love it this time around as much as you did the first time. Enjoy, my friend. We are talking about pitching messy because some of us need a few quick wins in order to really dig in and integrate new marketing strategies or consistent marketing strategies into our already busy work lives. Now, if you're an OG listener, you know some of my more methodical, longer-term approaches to pitching, and they are great and they work really well. But today, we're really going to hopefully spark a little bit of life and energy into your own podcast pitching workflow. So, doing it messy means getting it done and making it as painless as possible. And for me, it also means eliminating all of the excuses for why you can't do it. What I know is that so many people end up putting off podcast pitching until they have all of their ducks in a row. And mind you, a lot of these ducks are imagined, hypothetical ducks, if you will. They imagine these ducks to be super hard to put in a row, and they put it all off completely because they don't have a long-term system. They don't have a lot of the assets that they think they have to have in order to pitch effectively. But what if you decided to pitch messy and then make it pretty after you gain some quick wins? So what if you just did the bare minimum to get pitches out the door? How does that feel when you hear that? That you don't have to do all of these things. You don't have to set up a workflow. You don't have to fully optimize your social media profiles. You don't have to have a kick-ass opt-in already established and proven in order to pitch yourself to be a guest on podcasts. Does it feel like you're taking a big sigh of relief? I know even for me, because I pitch myself and there are things that I want to do in my business to optimize the impact that my guesting has, but I am not letting that stop me from continuing to guest on podcasts, right? So if hearing that makes you actually take that big sigh of relief, then you are exactly who this episode is for. It's for the business owner who wants to grow your visibility, who wants to guest on podcast, but also who needs, in quotation marks, you need to create your one sheet. You need a pitch list of 50 shows, and you need 5 different topics before you take a step forward and hit send from your inbox. So, I'm excited to dig in and share what it looks like exactly to pitch messy. So really, what are the actual steps that it takes to get a pitch out the door when you set aside all of your excuses, all of your I don't have a one sheet reasons aside? So the big theme that you're going to notice in these steps is focusing on one. Rather than creating assets that are going to be useful in a long-term fashion, we want to focus on getting some pitches out the door quickly. So let's go over step one. The first thing that you want to do before you actually start sending pitches is to really clarify what your goals are. What are you hoping to achieve as a result of being on podcast? What product, what program are you looking to really guide people towards? And that's what you need to get clear on. So for the purposes of pitching messy, pick one goal. Do you want to get people to sign up for your opt-in? Perfect. Do you want to get people to learn about your membership program and possibly join? Wonderful. But that goal is super important. Like, who are you looking to get in front of, and what are you looking to drive them back to? So think about that as you're sort of contemplating what your goals are for pitching messy. Second, come up with your ideal podcast listener. Who is the person that you're looking to get in front of? And if you have a very clear goal, then you know exactly who that might be, right? If you know that you are looking for people who might be interested in joining your membership program, well, likely you know exactly who that is. There's probably several different types of people that could be, right? Ideal podcast listeners that I like to connect with would be podcast hosts who are looking to grow their downloads, right? Because podcast guesting is a great way to do that. Others might be online course creators who are looking to grow their audience and their email list. Others could be professionals who are looking to grow their authority and their specific niche and to connect with other influencers. Those are all examples of ideal podcast listeners that I like to connect with when I guest on someone else's show. But guess what? We can't connect with all of them at one time, right? We got to pick one. So pick one ideal podcast listener that for the purposes of pitching messy, you would like to connect with. Now, number 3 is actually a bit of a riff on a conversation that I recently had with Kevin Schmidlin, who is the host of Grow the Show. It's a great podcast for podcasters, teaching them how to grow their show and increase their own downloads. So I interviewed Kevin. He'll be a guest coming up on Go Pitch Yourself, and I, in turn, will be a guest on Grow the Show. But he talked about this framework for defining who your audience is as a host. His framework is the idea of describing your audience, the people that you want to show up in front of as a podcast host. This is on your own show, right? So the people that you are speaking to, and he describes it as blanks who blank and blank. And those are all very specific descriptors of the listeners that you are speaking to as you host your own show. And as he and I were talking, it really actually brought clarity to me in the way that I coach people to figure out who their ideal listener is. That's always something we talk about when we are pitching, when we are crafting pitches for clients, like who are we trying to get in front of? And then if you take it a step further, we can actually create a one-liner for one of those pitchable podcasts, which means how can we describe the type of podcast that we want to pitch? And for this one, I'm not telling you to come up with names. So don't come at me with, I want to be a guest on the Gold Digger, right? I want you to come up with a descriptor of the type of podcast that it would make sense for you to pitch and be a guest on. So to give you a framework for a one-liner that describes your pitchable podcast, I would recommend using, I want to be a guest on a podcast that talks to blank about blank. An example for me would be, I want to be a guest on podcasts that talk to podcast hosts, right? Not people that are dreaming of starting a podcast, but that talk to podcast hosts about growing their podcast. So that is a very descriptive way to know exactly who you're looking to get in front of and what type of show that listener would likely be listening to. So just to recap so far, you've established your goal for pitching messy. You've come up with your ideal podcast listener. You've got your one-liner for the pitchable podcast, a podcast that talks to blank about blank. Perfect. So you've got clarity on the strategy. That's a really short way to kind of nail down your strategy, but it works because you're just doing it messy. All right, step number 4, craft one topic. Come up with one topic that ideal podcast listener would want to hear on that pitchable podcast. What's one topic that would be relevant? So for me, just to kind of illuminate what that might sound like, my topic could be how to pitch yourself to be a guest on other people's podcasts, right? I mean, that's sort of like run of the mill. I would make it a little sexier, more exciting, and unique than what I've shared on, at this point now, probably close to 40 different podcasts. But in general, come up with one topic. What is the one topic that those listeners are going to want to hear you talk about on that podcast that we just described? From there, you take number 4, you craft your topic, and you turn it into a pitch template. Now, when we talk about templates, usually we are talking about a very long form Google Doc that has several different topics, typically 3 to 5, fully fleshed out with bullet points. In this instance, I just want you to create a pitch template that has one topic fully fleshed out. So your pitch template could look very simply like a connection and a greeting, right? Hello, host. Love your show. Love what you're doing with it. I noticed you haven't covered this topic, which is why I would love to offer myself up as a guest. Quick one-liner about yourself. Introduce the topic, why it would be relevant to their audience, what their listener might take away from it, and then do some sort of closing as to experience that you've had podcasting, your willingness to share, etc. Just do that for that one topic. You don't need to curate it for 5 different topics, okay? So now you have a template to start your pitching with, okay? Number 6, you're going to find shows to pitch. You're not going to find 50 shows, and you're not going to find 10 shows in various niches. You are going to find 3 to 5 shows that are described by that one-liner that you came up with. So find 3 to 5 shows that are that pitchable podcast. So for me, I would find a couple of shows that are speaking to podcast hosts about growing their podcast. I would go out, find it, and put that down on a piece of paper, in a Google Sheet, whatever is easiest. And then step number 7, pluck those shows off one by one and send the pitch. That's it. That's pitching messy. I didn't mention a one sheet. I didn't mention making sure your website is optimized. Make sure you have a Facebook pixel on your opt-in page. Make sure you have a welcome sequence. None of that. Because honestly, the people that I know who are interested in being a guest on podcasts, they know it is probably one of the best marketing avenues and strategies for them. But they have not taken that step forward because they feel like they need to get all of these other things done. And they haven't had the quick win of getting a yes and having an interview recorded and having it go live. So the purpose, again, of pitching messy is to get a quick win so that you will have the motivation, the momentum to keep going for the long haul. And that's when you can go back and do all of those things that are present in sort of an ideal scenario. But until then, let's get some pitches out the door. So I want to know from you what you think of this. Is it too messy? Does it feel overly complicated? It shouldn't. I really pared it down to the bare minimum of what it would take to get the pitch out. That's all for today, friend. Definitely send me a DM, tag me on this bad boy if breaking it down like this allowed you to take a big deep breath and actually get a pitch out the door. I want to celebrate your successes with you, so let me know. Until next time, be well and be visible. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Go Pitch Yourself. If you found this episode to be helpful, friend, you would be blown away by what we can accomplish together. Here are 2 next best steps. 1, be sure to sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter. That is twice a month if that term confuses you as much as it does me. Each week that our episodes drop, I send an action-focused email, including an insider tip of the week based on the work that we do behind the scenes in our client's business. For example, a recent tip of the week included how to estimate how large a podcast audience is. To get access to this exclusive content, pop on over to the podwisegroup.com/pitches and sign up. As a special thank you, you'll get your first insider tip of the week as access to 6 pitches my team and I have sent that were accepted, including the core components of any great pitch. Number 2, schedule a call with me to figure out which of our services, if any, would be a good fit for you. We have a variety of ways to support you and your team in helping grow your business through podcast guesting, and I am pretty skilled at helping identify pain points and solutions. Hop over to the podwisegroup.com/services and grab a spot on my calendar at the bottom of the page.